Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. It is take two of our part two of the 2026 AFL season previews.
That's right.
A roving dachshund may have ruined take one. However, we can't promise, we can hope that take two goes as smoothly as the first take did as we run through some of the top teams contending for AFL glory in 2026. I'm Jesse, joined as always by Liam.
Hello.
Here on Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. And today, Liam, we are going to talk about some of those good teams, which is a nice change from what we did last week, because most of the teams we talked about last week were quite bad.
That's right, Jesse. They are quite bad. So this week we're going to the top echelons who we think are going to make the wild card at @CMPerfect_AFL. As always, if you want to get in touch with us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple and Amazon for our main audio podcast, which is just this, but just noise, which I think we like, don't we, Jesse? We like just noise.
Sounds like the AFL media in general, which we contribute to.
We do. But yeah, so today we're going to go through the top 10, who we think is going to make the top 10. A couple at the bottom, Jesse, of this list who might not make the top 10. There's a bit of a...
flirting with an early exit.
Flirting with the early exits. We ended last episode with St Kilda, who we thought were it could have been put into this little group here, yes. But we needed 8. So now we have to do the next lot, Jesse. So without further ado, before we get on, any changes, because I did these graphics last week in preparation. That's a hard word to say. Preparation for this episode. Haven't really changed much. Updated a couple of the injuries. But has your mind changed on any of these positions since last week, Jesse?
No, not really. I mean, we're through most of the preseason. We are through the preseason now, actually, at the time of recording this. So, you could take stock of that. But I think, like I said in part one, fairly consistently, you take stock out of individual performers in preseason rather than collective team efforts, and that probably helps sides. Obviously, West Coast were quite poor against Port Adelaide yesterday, but I think you're more so looking underneath the hood and what individuals are doing in that environment, and the same goes for the other end. I mean, I guess Port is a good example here. Obviously, dominant in that regard. Georgiades was excellent. Butters was excellent. We expected that.
Yep.
Are we seeing much from the other players in that periphery around them? I think that's probably the question that will still exist for a lot of teams coming out of preseason. I don't think too much has changed in that regards, except for maybe one team who we are talking about today, because I think we're going to see a brave coach would make the changes based on what we've seen in preseason on an individual level.
Ooh, it's a bit of a spoiler, Jesse. You can tell me all about that once we get to the team, whoever that may be. But we'll kick off today with the first of our top 10, and that is, surprisingly, for some, I'm guessing, the Collingwood Magpies. You've given us the window of 9th to 12th, as last week, same thing. We're doing our little ladder window, any injuries that might be affecting the team, and then obviously the story of the season. So Collingwood, Jesse, 9th to 12th. They're never out of the conversation. Obviously, they've got superstars still in the team. But for me, that seems to be like the age might be starting to catch up. We've said this before, but what are your thoughts?
Yes, I agree. The limiting factor for me this year in a Collingwood context is their forward line. Now, Brody Marchek is not a superstar. He's not a generational talent, but he's a very reliable goal scorer in a team that was already playing quite small in that forward 6 last season. That's now gone, and I'm just concerned that Collingwood haven't necessarily been able to fill that void directly. I mean, we know that Ash Johnson was looking like he could take up that mantle. He's now out of the football club entirely. Myercheck gone, as we just mentioned. So Bobby Hill, it's a question if we're going to see Bobby Hill in the black and white again. Certainly for an extended period of time. So that's definitely 2 of your best 6 forwards in Myercheck and Hill, and another guy that you need tools realistically in Johnson. So that's another one. Now we're just starting to see Collingwood potentially struggle. So McStay needs to have an enormous year.
He does, yeah.
Enormous year needed from McStay. They need guys like Schultz and Elliott to continue to hit the scoreboard. But I guess that ties back into your age profile point at the start of this league. Can Elliott keep going to that same level?
Milo doesn't think so. Milo does not think so at all.
1 second.
That's okay.
New running shoes arrived.
Very good. Okay, so
Postman upsetting Milo.
It's okay. I thought it was all about the McStay there for a second, Jesse, but no, it's just new shoes, which is always exciting as well. Oh, the dash out promise is still here, Jesse, but that's okay. We push on because he's cute, so we'll let it happen. We'll let it slide. But Marchek's gone, Cox is gone as well, so the forward line's going to be interesting. But I don't know. It seems like to me that we always talk about the Pies in this kind of. I say always so often, but I mean in recent years. where we think the slide's going to happen, kind of like a Geelong-esque kind of situation where we're like, this is the year they're going to fall off a cliff. They're going to fall off a cliff. But Craig McRae's got a pretty good side together, a pretty good team, I should say. So they're always going to be in and around. So it wouldn't surprise me this year to see them finish like 5th or 6th still. Do you know what I mean? But it's going to be an interesting look this year to see if that can actually happen, or if it's going to be a case of it's too much. Like the team mentality can only go so far.
Well, I think just on McRae, I think he's the best man manager in the competition. You know, you look at different coaches in the way that and their strengths and their weaknesses. I think McRae is fine tactically. There's nothing wrong with him on that tactical front, but I think he is clearly stronger than most when it comes to that man management and that togetherness and that siege mentality, which I think, as you allude to when you talk about the squad as a whole, it does make a big impact. So Collingwood, I can't see them falling off a cliff this year. I don't think they'll be poor. I still think it'd be really hard to beat, and it's certainly hard to break. So even the top sides are probably going to get stuck in the mud against a team like Collingwood with a fair level of consistency. But, you know, you start talking about games that might have been 5-point wins 2 seasons ago when they kept getting away with it. How could they do that? They might become 15, 20-point losses this season, and that just might be the difference. And that's not going to be a complete uniform shift. You're not going to have every result translate on that front. Collingwood will still win enough games to make the finals, I believe. They're also a team that can probably potentially get to week what is now 3 of the finals, being the semi-finals. If they're probably going to be favourites in the wildcard no matter who they're playing, just because they've been here before. Then they go into an elimination final. Again, it depends on who they're matched up against, but you know, you do back in their quality, and we saw that they were pretty ordinary. I thought they did what was required for the most part of last season, but then they clearly went to another level in the finals campaign. I guess you're going to see a similar trend this season in that regard. So don't be surprised if Collingwood scrape into the top 10, but go a lot further than what their position says they may.
Story of the season for the Pies, Jesse.
Last dance for Pie royalty. That's probably the only factor I think could really see them push higher, especially with who's in that coach's box. They might just be able to kick on.
Big year for Pendlebury if he can stay healthy. I think it's just the week before Anzac Day. He will pass the game's record, which is a pretty big milestone indeed. But yeah, I think that's probably all she wrote after that for Pendles. Look, he can probably still go for 6 years. Who knows? All right, Jesse, we'll move on to the next team off the ranks, which is the GWS Giants. Similar window, 8th to 11th for the Giants. The big caveat for them at the moment is their injury list is pretty hectic. Tom Green, Darcy Jones, Sam Taylor, Toby Bedford, Finn Callaghan, Josh Kelly. Lots of names on that list that are probably part of their best 22 who are going to be missing some significant time, which is going to be a big old kick.
And that's the thing here, Liam. Taylor and Callaghan, we should see back in some capacity.
We should.
Relatively early in the season. No Kelly. No Green. No Jones. Bedford's out for a while as well, from memory. But even if you just focus on Green, Jones, Kelly, that's 2 of their best 4 mids. And keep in mind, their midfield is stacked. And their best small forward and a vital player for connecting that forward 50 into the midfield section of the ground. So the Giants may find themselves in a similar position to Sydney last season, where they're treading water in the first half of the year and just need to be in it late to make the finals. Now, obviously, 2 more places significantly helps with that, and having a pretty good coach doesn't hurt either. But the Giants, I think they're just going to have to really grind it out. So don't be surprised if the Orange Tsunami game style that they're known for isn't as prevalent in the first dozen weeks of the season, and we get to the bye rounds without seeing a lot of that. And it's just a different approach and kind of a more conservative approach from the Giants. And you can make the argument that, well, that robs them of what they're best of and they become a bit directionless. And I do, agree with that to an extent. But you can't look at those players that are out all season and say this is going to function exactly as it did last season or in recent years where they've been even more competitive than that. The problem the Giants had last season was the difference between their best and their worst was so stark. And when they were poor, they were completely limp and they couldn't hurt teams. Losing players like Green, Jones, and Kelly, more specifically the first 2, given Kelly has had injury troubles recently anyway, but losing Green and Jones specifically blunts them even further, especially when you talk about Green's ability to score goals as a midfielder and Jones's role in dishing up opportunities for Cadman and Jesse Hogan, it's a big change. It's a big change to how the Giants are going to look. And, it might be a case of not necessarily a write-off year, but looking ahead to what the next few years could look like. And that's going to be a big shift for the Giants because Toby Green won't have a whole lot left in his career. Jesse Hogan is probably getting to that similar position where you may see a trend down in him. Sam Taylor, the concussions are a worry with Sam Taylor, and there's obviously the $1 million question of Clayton Oliver. How does he slot in? What does he still have to offer? And can he sustain that for multiple years beyond 2026?
Well, he's 28 now, and he's obviously had a bit of a rough trot the last couple of years at the Ds. So I'm actually just really excited to see how he turns it around this year, because he's going to get a lot of opportunity, especially with all these injuries. So, coming into a new system, coming into a new game of style of play, should be good for him. Should be a good little. And there's a number of players in that same boat that we've spoken about at length in our previous videos. But I'm intrigued to see what Clayton Oliver does and brings to the midfield of the Giants. That is for sure. But the story of the season, Jesse.
Orange Tsunami unable to make waves when it counts.
Which is kind of what you were saying before, right? Maybe the change of everything, change of game style won't be the same Giants of old. Anything else to add, Jesse, before we move on?
I think let's move across town.
Go across the bridge, Jesse, shall we? To the Sydney Swans. To the Sydney Swans. And this is our Sydney Swans. Not mine, not yours, just the Sydney Swans. 8th to 11th, similar window, same again. I've chucked Errol Goulden in that list. I don't think it's going to be a long-term injury, but he's done his ankle. TBC on how long that's going to be. And then obviously the two young kids, Max King, Jevon Philippou, and Harry Cunningham out as well. Now, this is the team that I think across the board probably has the widest window in terms of, if you ask some people and ask others, it could be second, it could be premiers, it could be missing the finals altogether. That's where the Swans kind of sit at the moment, based purely on their list depth. Jesse, is that about right?
Thinner than a rice cracker at Sydney. It is paper thin. Mm-hmm. You could go into Woolies, you could go down the aisle, you get a Sakatar, you get the Woolies brand, you get whatever you fancy. Mm-hmm. It's as thin as that. It is a thin list, and it's a list with so many problems outside of the half dozen Rolls Royces they've got in the garage. And that is a limiting factor, even more so potentially limiting than the fact that the guy they've got in the coach's box has shown nothing to indicate that he can be a senior coach at AFL level. And let's be honest, he has shown nothing in that regard.
Mm. Well, it's going to be interesting to see, because obviously Errol Goulden started last year on the bench as well. And on the bench, I mean, not playing at all because he was injured.
Yeah.
So coming off the bats, if they've got him out for a couple of games, I guess you're going to see exactly how important Errol is to holding this team together. Obviously, Heaney's a gun. Curnow up in the forward line is a new one as well. But I mean, they had, well, obviously not Curnow, but they had Goulden running roughshod last year as well, but they couldn't get it done. So going to be interesting to see if that is literally just this one player holds it together, because then it's going to show that just exactly, it's going to expose how Sydney and how thin they really are. It's a bit of a worry, Jesse. It's a bit of a worry.
I also am concerned that defensively they are vulnerable to being overmatched, and I think about some of the sides in this top 10 that we're going to talk about today, and I think about even just the height of some of these forward lines we're going to get to, and then the quality therein. I don't see how Sydney defensively can match up with an Adelaide, a Gold Coast, a Western Bulldogs. You could even throw in Geelong in that, because they've just got two very good key forwards. Fremantle as well, in terms of just raw power in that forward line. And even, quite honestly, teams that are below, how is the Sydney defence going to go against Jake Waterman and Job Shanahan?
Yeah, true.
Even that's potentially an overmatch for them on paper, which is, an immediate alarm bell given, we think the West Coast are probably going to be down the bottom. If Todd Marshall's healthy and he can pair with Georgiades, can Sydney deal with that? And we're talking about teams that we're saying bottom six. Errol Goulden with a full season could probably win a Brownlow. Sure. He is that good of a player. Oh. And he's the type of player that can drag this list with him into the lower parts of the wildcard. But if Heaney and Warner aren't 100% this season, if Charlie Curnow doesn't have the impact that I think everyone seems to have just automatically decided that he will, it could be a long, long year for the Swans.
Yeah. Charlie Curnow is a funny one, because obviously he's got that name value, and I think everyone just thinks, oh, well, wherever he goes, he'll just be fine. But he hasn't been overly impactful the last couple of years anyway. So it's I don't know. It's interesting, Jesse.
Look, he may feel a bit liberated from being outside of that Carlton bubble, and that may help. Sure. But, you now need to bring back Logan McDonald, who has struggled for form and fitness in the last 24 months.
Mm-hmm.
He's then got to come back in. 6 months ago, he's probably thinking, great, I get to have season 2026 as the number one key forward at Sydney again. Hooray.
Yeah.
And now that's just not a chance of happening with Charlie Curnow around. So all of a sudden, Logan McDonald's season looks very different. If Curnow isn't performing and doesn't have that impact that he needs to have for Sydney, this could be quite bad. The biggest criticism I have of the Swans last year was their inability to consistently break down teams and get over the hump when they were challenged. And we saw that they would get to 20 points, they would get to close to an early win. Even the Hawks in opening round last season, they got to within a goal and then just threw it away.
Yeah.
Because they just couldn't physically press beyond that. They had limiting factors in that team. I don't think that's been resolved.
Yeah. Well, I mean, story of the season, Jesse, we've pretty much talked about it, but what is the story of the season going to be?
Soft Swans underbelly halts finals progress.
Yeah, not much more to add there, is there, Jesse? I mean, because they're going to be in and about the clump. We've got another clump, Jesse, because this is all going to be the Wildcard clump. I'll work on the Wild Clump. We'll work on a better name, Jesse, because it's hard to say. All right, time is on, Jesse, because we've got our next team off the ranks, which is our boys, the Freo Dockers. Let a window of 7th to 10th. Only Sam Sturt on the injury list as we speak. All right, Jesse, what do we think? Lots of talk about the Dockers being a top 4 side. He's got the well out straight away. Okay,
because you've actually telegraphed exactly what I'm going to say here.
Okay,
knowing what we know about Fremantle, I'm comfortable with where I've put my ladder window for them, which is 7th to 10th. I'm comfortable with that bracket. However, the dichotomy here is with this list quality, not top 4 is a failure, and it's an indictment on an inability to tactically evolve into 2020. And we're now in 2026, Liam. Vanilla ball is staying. I'm not going to get sucked into the hype around preseason because we did that last year when we saw a couple of passages of play move fast. Just wait until teams get their structure set up behind the ball.
Yep.
The biggest yardstick for Fremantle's progression will be how quickly they're willing to move the ball on from a mark, a free kick, any type of stoppage in play where they have possession. If that doesn't change from last year, Fremantle have no opportunity to progress. They did very well to eke out 16 wins last year on the basis of just sheer on-field quality and huge seasons from guys like Patrick Voss, which wasn't expected. That was another 30 goals that came into the team that wasn't accounted for last season at this time. Sarong and Brayshaw continuing to have injury-free seasons has allowed them to continue to surge through the midfield and also managing to avoid significant injuries to Cox and Pearce. Fremantle got incredibly fortunate last year with an injury-free season for just about the entirety. Only Hayden Young really missed time of the elite players at Fremantle, and that is a very different situation to what clubs like the Bulldogs, clubs like Sydney, that faced last season. It's a big difference, and it helped so much. They're in the same position right now. That key injury, Sam Sturt, he's not going to play anyway.
Yep.
Unfortunately, sunset is set on Sam Sturt. But can they improve tactically? Because I honestly don't believe there is much more room for improvement on the field in terms of quality. Now, you can look at players that are on that periphery, so guys like Wagner, Warner, Banfield, Dudley, these guys who, they're battlers, and they do hold things back in that regard. But Fremantle have done so well to make a pretty bomb-proof top 15 on their list that realistically, that top 15 on the list is good enough to win a premiership. I firmly believe that top 15 can win a premiership on their sheer quality alone. So then you look at, did they resolve the depth issues at Fremantle? And have they resolved the tactical issues at Fremantle? Well, depth issues, they fixed the biggest glaring one, which was a lack of reliable small defender. I don't know why. Brendan Walker was out of favour last season, but he's back at the same time Judd McVee's come in.
Yep.
So, but we're taking it as a net positive because that should realistically mean no more Bailey Banfield.
Yes.
That's what it should mean. They've actually fixed the other big issue in a way that I must say I'm very impressed with how Mason Cox has started life in purple. I didn't think he would have the hunger and the motivation that he's shown. and I'm really impressed. And he is clearly our second choice ruckman now. He is clearly that guy.
Yeah.
And for the record, Luke Jackson is the first choice ruckman. You don't sully the Lamborghini by making it drive the Bibbulmun track.
Yeah.
You keep the Lambo on the roads doing what it does best.
Yeah.
And you keep the Prados on the track, right? Luke Jackson is not a midfielder.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got a midfield of Sarong, Brayshaw, Young, Shea Bolton can go in there. Johnson, Erasmus is stepping up.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly out of all of those names, Murphy Reid.
Murphy Reid.
Now, that is an unbelievable midfield. That midfield, I genuinely would say, is the best midfield or one of the best three midfields in the competition. It is an unbelievably good midfield that Fremantle have managed to collect and retain on long-term contracts. It is an unbelievable effort by the recruitment department to have done that. However, small forwards, still poor. And it's going to be a case of Tracy, Amiss, and hopefully Voss needing to kick 75% of the goals this season because we just don't have anyone reliable in that role. Frederick, I'm really worried about. I'm really worried about Michael Frederick. I think that the hangover from that elimination final is still very much there in the preseason footage that we've seen to this point. I'm really worried about Michael Frederick. And that leaves us with a problem because not sold on Tobin Murray. Don't want Bailey Banfield back in the forward line. Isaiah Dudley's not good enough for a team pushing for top four. Scary, quite unknown. Swade, a child and unknown as well. And you'd be asking a lot for them to have a second debutant in as many years go in and be a star straight away.
Yeah.
And not to say that he can't do it, we just don't know. So Fremantle now find themselves in a position where the top of the list is excellent. The fixture this season, honestly, pretty generous. So realistically, the expectation has to be top four. And anything less than top four is a failure. And I genuinely believe that would be worse. Certainly missing top six this season would be worse than missing the finals in 2024. With the quality of this list, this is the best chance Fremantle have ever had to win a premiership, ever. On paper, with that top 15 players in that list, this is the best we've ever had. 2013 was a fantastic team, and I loved them forever. But there were a lot of battlers in that team held together by a superstar coach and a superstar generational forward in Matt Pavlich. This is not that. This is a team of unbelievable quality from 1 down to 15, and then a pretty sharp drop-off with a coach that is unable to extract value out of those players.
Yeah.
Put Craig McRae with this list, they're players.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
100%. Is it even a question at that point? Or at least we're talking about them as potential premiers. I don't think we're talking about Fremantle as potential premiers this season because there is still those tactical limitations.
Yeah. 100%. And I do worry when I was watching the preseason games. Obviously, the one against Adelaide was quite fun to watch because they looked like they had things going, but it was very one-dimensional. And it's not going to take teams long to work out what's going on, which has been the problem with
one-dimensional is fine if you just if you're able to just brute force it. And I think Adelaide experienced that last year. I think Adelaide were quite linear in what they did in terms of looking for those big forward targets, having moved the ball quickly. But it worked.
Yeah,
like it did work. Brisbane, they're three-dimensional. They're a very good, diverse team. Damien Hardwick has 1,000,001 plays in his playbook. So I agree with you, Liam. One-dimensional is a limiting factor. But gee, I think we do need to start getting realistic about expectations for Fremantle. There's probably one more club I would say here. We're actually going to talk about them next, where they probably should be being talked about as premiership quality given the top 12 to 15 players on their list as well. But we're still stuck with limiting factors. Well,
let's get through the story of the season for the Dockers and we'll move on to that next team, Jesse.
Vanilla overload as Docker disappointment continues.
Yeah. Hopefully not. Like we say every time, Jesse, prove us wrong, Freo. Prove us wrong.
Believe me, I would love to be on here in 6 months saying, ha, wasn't I wrong? Doesn't happen very often.
No, it doesn't. All right, let's go to the next team, Jesse, you were just talking about, which is the Western Bulldogs, window of 6th to 9th. You know, interesting one for the Bullies this year because last year they looked like they had the goods, but were hampered heavily by injuries at the start of the season, couldn't really recover. What are your thoughts? Because obviously you said there was a lot of similarities to the Dockers there.
I have a separate thought first, and I apologize to the podcast listeners who can't see this, but why is Bontempelli eating the story of the season?
Just because it's fun.
That's either a really unfortunate or really fortunate placement of the graphic.
Oh, nothing is accidental, Jesse.
Okay. Are you sure?
Not at all.
Thank you. Look, I think that the top 15, even top 18 with the Dogs, to be honest, their list is very good at that top end.
Yeah.
And, Bontempelli, it's pretty clear. He's the first guy you see on the screen. It's pretty easy to identify with. But Darcy and Norden as a forward 1-2, that is lethal. I think guys like Ed Richards and Bailey Dale are perennially underrated and are very good midfield hybrid type players who can damage across the ground. Tim English, when fit, is one of the best ruckmen in the competition. We're seeing guys like Jordan Crofts step up immensely in that forward line as well late in the season. But then you talk about the back six and how bad it is. And the fact that the Dogs could score 120 and still be in danger of losing the game, which is a pretty big limiting factor. And I think for the Dogs fans, and I'd be very interested if the Dogs fans have anything to add to this in the comment section. So please, if you are listening and you do have thoughts on this, let us know. This has got to be so frustrating, right? Because the Dogs' defensive fragility has really been there since Easton Wood left. And it's just not been resolved. They've managed to get some good guys in, but their best defender is a ex-ruck turned forward, now turned fullback, who, can't fold his effort. And he does definitely try down there, Roy Lobb, but he's not able to do it with any level of consistency because he just doesn't have that defensive grounding that so many does. You can see why they went. You can see why they went so hard at Cal Wilkie, who, if they got, this is probably a top 4 side. Just because you trust Cal Wilkie to patrol that back 50 and just kill off just almost anything that comes down there. If they can find a way to implement a game style that just keeps the ball in their attacking half for as much of the game as possible, they can win something like 18 games a season just off the basis of their power and just the sheer strength that they have in that forward half and the midfield. But the defensive fragility is a real concern. I like the pickup of Louis Carmichael as a small defender. I hope he plays early doors for the Dogs because I think his leadership qualities and his ability to clamp, I think, will be a real addition to them and potentially something they desperately need because since guys like Jason Johannesson have petered out, they've struggled to rebound effectively as well, I feel, unless they've got a guy like Fraser dropping down to then go and get the ball moving forward. They've struggled to actually generate outside 50 exit or defensive 50 exits from their actual back six. So let's have a look and see how this works. I wouldn't be surprised if they were grand finalists this year.
Okay.
I equally wouldn't be surprised if they barely made the wildcard. There's not many teams in this list that are so perfectly balanced between the two.
Yeah, and we've spoken about a few of them already. Obviously, the Swans are in that, Dockers are in that. But the Dogs are they're always top 4, knocking on the door, but potentially another nearly season, Jesse, you reckon?
Unfortunately, for the Dogs fans, I can't throw support behind them until that back six is at least progressed.
Yeah, that's understandable. Anything else to add before you move on to your story, Jesse?
No, let's do the story, which is Darcy dominates as defensive disasters continue.
I'm really intrigued by Sam Darcy this year. I said Sean Darcy. Not intrigued by him at all.
My heist didn't come off either, by the way. I tried.
Yeah, I know.
But Luke Beveridge just laughed at me. I said, you know what? That's fair.
That is a deep cut. I'm going to see if anyone understands that one, Jesse. Goodness me. But I'm intrigued.
That's one for the long-time listeners.
That's right. I'm intrigued to see how he goes, though, because a lot of hype behind him on the young kid. He looks like he's got all the goods there. So let's see if he can get a big old, potentially Coleman winning season behind him. Let's see. All right. Jesse, we've kind of moved out of our clump now. We kind of moved out the clump of the wild carders. We've now moved into who we think is going to be in the top echelons of the actual competition this year. And we're starting with a team that's so familiar in that top echelon, regardless of how many seasons we think they're going to drop off. It is the Geelong Cats. Jesse, Geelong. Surely it's going to come sooner or later, doesn't it? Where it's reverse psychology. Every year we predict they're going to drop. This year we're going to say they're not going to drop. And what's going to happen?
Earlier it will look like they drop because they've got a brutal start to the season with a couple of injuries as well that will keep them honest. Now, here's the thing. If they get through the first 6 rounds of the season with something like a 5-1 record, then they're probably going to finish top 2. because their start to the season is horrific. It's like a murder scene.
Who have they got? And they got Freo in round 1.
They've got Gold Coast in round 0.
Oof.
I'm just pulling up the fixtures.
Yeah.
Un memento.
It's only fair because we looked at Ports last week and they're absolutely easy run coming into the start. Geelong got Gold Coast is tough. Freo,
you're doing it. Thank you.
Oh no, I was just I was stalling for time for you, Jesse.
Okay, well here you go. How's this for a run? Gold Coast in round 0. Fremantle round 1, then a bye, then Adelaide in round 3, Hawthorn in round 4, the West Coast in round 5, Bulldogs in round 6.
Ooh.
So you get to the middle of April, which is when Geelong Bulldogs is on the 17th. That's a tough start, but then it gets significantly easier after that. You go Port, North, Collingwood, who they should beat. Brisbane, that's a tough game. Sydney, they should beat, I think. Carlton.
Mm.
So if they can get through the difficulties of the early part of the season, which is a big ask because that is a really tough start to the season, if they can get through that with some kind of positive, like overwhelmingly positive record, like a 5-1, then they probably do finish top 2 because they're going to have an absolute birthday party late in the season.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even if you get through that, if they can get through in 3-3, I think they'll be fine, and they're finishing somewhere in that top 6. I think we've got them in 5th in the order of these teams. I think, yeah, because Freo was 7th, so that must be 5th for Geelong. That's probably still well and truly on the cards, given how tough the start of the year is. You just got to rely on a team that has, you know, a brilliant coach, both tactically and man management wise, in Chris Scott.
Mm-hmm.
The best forward in the competition, Jeremy Cameron, a forward who could one day be the best forward in the competition in Shannon Neal. Stengel and Myers are excellent at their feet as well. Then you get through the midfield where they just dominate. You know, they hunt the ball, they hunt in packs. They've got Bailey Smith, who is unbelievable. Max Holmes, I think Max Holmes is one of the most underrated players in the competition.
Absolutely.
Brilliant player. And then defensively, I don't think they have superstars in defense. Obviously, Tom Stewart probably gets the most amount of wider credit, but they just defend so well as a back six. And teams like Sydney, teams like the Dogs could learn a lot from the way Geelong have structured their back six because it just works.
Yeah.
Like the way they just set up and defend as a unit, it's brilliant and allows them to put their recruitment effort higher up on the field.
You mentioned 4 names in there, Jesse, at the top. Obviously, Cameron, Stengel, Neal, Myers, all currently sitting on the injury list with early season kind of returns, right? So not really too sure what it is. Shannon Neal's still got a TBC next to him because I think he did himself a mischief in the pre-season game on the weekend.
I don't think it's a high-grade PCL. I think he'll be back relatively soon.
Perfect. But if they're not back for those first 2, 3, 4 games, could see them a bit of strife because who else they got up forward?
That's your main 4.
That's
really.
The 4, right? Yeah. Because it's like who do you chuck down there? So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully they can get them back and healthy right about round 2. That'd be great.
I think we need all the help we can get.
I think so.
Yes.
I mean, I think what we had Geelong round 1 last year, didn't we? As well, it was an absolute.
Yes, we did.
It was absolute slaughter.
It was a murder at Gunga.
It was indeed. But no, Geelong are superstars, a super team. They've been in and around it for so long now. It's really hard to write them off. But their story of the season, Jesse, I think you've said it well. But wrap it up in a nice little bow.
Catastrophe early, recovers with a fast finish.
Well done, you. And that's all because of, and that is obviously because of their really tough draw. Let's see how they go. Let's move on, Jesse, to the next team. The double champs, the double reigning premiers of the Brisbane Lions, the window of 2nd through to 5th. A few interesting injuries in there, some big names. Again, very forward line heavy. But I mean, it's the Brisbane Lions, Jesse. They're superstars. They're double premiers for a reason. What are your thoughts on their season this year?
They're going to be there at abouts. They're going to do what they always do, which is perform at the same level for 24 weeks, which is good enough for 17, 18 wins. And then when the pressure's on, this group knows how to respond and how to suffocate teams. They suffocated the Suns last season. They suffocated the Cats last season when the pressure was on in the finals. They're such a difficult side to match up against because they can hurt you in so many different ways. And I think last year they did it while both developing young players and also allowing some of the older guys to have that bit of a slide as well. We were so worried last year about how they would go without Joe Danaher. Completely Adelaide with Logan Morris continuing to step up. Hipwood having a good season. Ty Gallup coming in as well.
It's a non-factor.
Yeah, it was. It was genuinely like, what is a Joe Danaher?
Yeah.
was being said around the Gabba by round 10. They're just such a complete side. Now, does that mean they're going to win the premiership this year? Not necessarily, because you can always get an upshot team in the finals who just punch you and just hit you hard, like a Hawthorn or a Gold Coast this time around. You know, that's the danger with the Lions, is they're probably vulnerable against teams who just really go on the front foot and get after you. Or teams that lull you into a false insecurity. I remember they had a real trouble with Essendon last season. Yeah. Because Essendon just collapsed the game and made it offensively bad.
And draw with Kangas as well.
Yes. So I think that if allowing Brisbane to get into the rhythm or playing the game style that Fagan expects you to play is a fatal move against the Lions, because they'll set up to mimic that and just crush it. It's when you either overload them, which is hard to do, or lull them into that false sense of security that you can get them. So we'll see.
Yeah. And obviously, like similar to Geelong, when I asked you who else they've got up forward in terms of their injuries, like replacing Hipwood, Draper, Oscar Allen, already there.
Well, Draper and Allen are kind of asterisks because we haven't seen them. So they're not really replacing anyone because they haven't been there.
Sure, but on previous known skill set, Jesse, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so
sure.
they're big names who have come into the club, obviously, in the off-season. Unsure. I think Hipwood's quite long-term. I think Draper's are probably 4 or 5 rounds in. Oscar Allen's concussion issues. But like you were saying before, you've got those young kids already there just to step up and step in, which is such a valuable weapon for any team to have, is that depth, which has been, a bit of a hot topic in this episode, Jesse, about all that depth that's there.
Yeah, they're probably the deepest team in the competition, which it shouldn't come as a surprise given their consecutive premiers, but they really do have so much quality. And you can see when the Guzzik Stars Fiction Archie getting squeezed out. Like, these are quality players who are ultimately having to make way because they're not best 23, even though at probably 15 other clubs in the competition, they are.
Yeah, 100%. Story of the season for the Lions, Jesse.
3 peak chasing Lions continue strong form. I'm not seeing a drop off this season.
No, not quite. You haven't quite got the window up into the minor premiership, even though it could definitely happen, obviously.
They're not a minor premiership side for me, though, because they don't have that upper ceiling in the home and away season that some of the other clubs are about to talk about do. They're not a minor premiership side for me. They've never really been that, though.
They do their best work in September.
Of contention. They do their best work in September.
Gotcha. Well, we're about to move on to, I think it's 4 teams now, Jesse, or 3 teams that you think have the...
3 teams, because we have I had the Lions in 4th.
That's right. There we go. So 3 teams who you think could have a good shot at getting the minor premiership, starting with the team in South Australia, the Adelaide Crows. 1st to 4th is their window. Top 4 finish is not a bad window to have. Jesse, just going to continue their form from last year, keep it rolling into this one, you reckon?
I think so. And that 3-headed monster up forward, and probably the best back 6 in the comp. It's not far off. If it isn't, it's really not that far off. This is a very good spinal team, the Crows. And, the midfield part is obviously the asterisks for them in terms of how far can they go. But I don't look at a midfield of, primarily Dawson and Rankin and say, well, this midfield sucks. Like, I don't think it's that. I just don't think it's as powerful as some of the other teams around them, which, is a pretty easy thing to go and pick on and say, well, that's concerning. Dan Curtin missing time is a real shame because he was probably poised to go and be in that first set of bounce of round 1. That's obviously going to change things for them, but I look at Dawson. I'd love to see Rochelle rotate higher up the ground as well. With consistency, I think that would be a big boost for them.
He did give it a crack last year, didn't he? He was up and moving into the mids a little bit.
Yeah. I think he had moments, but I think that also goes to show that I think Matty Nix is quite underrated as a coach, and he's probably still got a bit of development to go in his coaching journey to be on the same level as some of the guys. Well, literally the 3 guys around him, but I think what we saw from the Crows last year was a lot of togetherness, and even with the Isaac Rankin controversy, which was entirely of his own making, but it was a huge distraction for the football club.
Yep.
I still don't think it knocked them off their course. I know they went out in straight sets, but I don't think it really knocked the playing group off the course. They obviously missed Isaac Rankin, But it wasn't like a house of cards that just collapsed as soon as there was a bit of controversy. That didn't happen with the Crows. So I like that. I like the bond that the players playing group seem to have and the togetherness they're able to generate. So pretty clear for me the Crows have a top 3 forward line, a top 3 back 6. That's going to get you pretty far in this competition. They're clearly premiership contenders. It's now just a matter of whether they can put it all together.
Reckon the straight exit of last year, Jesse's going to light a fire under the belly, or is that just persona non grata?
Well, I spoke about this last season when we did the season reviews of the finals teams. I said that when you have such a huge jump like the Crows have had, you go from not being in the finals to a 25-week season plus finals. You know, there's a conditioning element for that as well. It's a huge jump in one go. It's not a shock that they weren't able to push on. Disappointing for the fan base, obviously, and the playing group, I'm sure. But when you have such a huge jump in quality on the field, it could take time for other things around it to catch up. This preseason is now that time for those things to catch up.
Story of the season, Jesse, for the Adelaide Crows.
Crows recruiters cause list management havoc. I suspect they're going to be working the phones quite heavily this season to see if they can upset the apple cart. And you know what? They should call Zach Butters manager.
Yeah.
He wouldn't go. He's not going to go there, but they should absolutely be making the phone call.
Just give it a crack. Don't ask, you don't get, Jesse. Don't ask, you don't get. All right, let's move on to the second last team.
Imagine the headlines in the week before showdown. If that's when they did it and then leaked it, that'd be good. That'd be good fun.
I mean, a big name jumping ship to the crosstown rivals would be huge. I don't think it's ever happened, right?
Well, keep in mind they'll be on the phone to Heath Scotland was a huge name in the Scotland household. They'll still be on the phone to Nazir Wanganeen Miller as manager as well. Make no mistake about that. That is, I said it in the Port bit last week. That is not dead and buried by any stretch of the imagination. They'll be on that phone every week, offering him tickets to the Adelaide 36ers, to Adelaide United, to Live Golf. What else do people do in Adelaide? To Glenelg. I'm sure there's something there.
That little German town that's out in the wine region as well. Heidelberg. Why not?
Go out to Snowtown. Just avoid the bank. Plenty to do. So I'm sure they'll be on the phone.
All right, let's quickly move on from this. All right, Jesse, second team off the road.
What a great time to tell people to subscribe. And that is probably maybe the only true crime reference you'll get all season. Yeah. Maybe.
It was a good one. Well placed. Well done. Gold Coast Suns, Jesse, obviously we're expecting them to have another big season off the back of last year's improvements because they've got some big names coming in over the off-season. That's just going to bolster their stocks. First to fourth, same window as I think they're all the first to fourth, actually, all top 4 windows for the last 3.
Yeah. Top 3, but yes.
Yeah. Top 4 for the last 3.
Yes.
Jesse, what are your thoughts on the Suns? Obviously, I'm excited for them.
Gee, this would be some true crime if they didn't make the top 4 because this list is ready to go. Mm-hmm. This is they've got the armor together, they've kitted up, got the helmet on, got everything they need, and they're just ready to charge. Mm-hmm. The Suns. This is as good as of a list as Gold Coast have ever had by a significant margin.
Oh yes,
and I know it's hard, and I think Fremantle are kind of in this boat as well, where clubs that have underperformed or underachieved for their existence, it's hard to go and then put that strong level of expectation on them and say, you must finish top 4. This is the expectation, but I think we need to with this team. This is pretty close to the best 22 in the competition. In fact, I would actually argue it is the best 22 in the competition.
Okay.
If it's not, it's second. I think, to be honest, on paper, this team is better than the team I've put first. On paper. It's a very good side. Ben King could easily win a Coleman this year.
Oh, yeah.
What's Jamari Ugle-Hagan going to do? If he doesn't do anything, that's okay, because Jed Walter exists.
Yeah.
Ethan Reid as well. Capable, above his head, can score goals. Midfield, you've got Bram Petrarca. The players are going to be well fed.
Yeah.
They're going to be extremely well fed.
Yeah. And they've also done all this with obviously keeping that young stock up and coming as well, like giving them game time and keeping them developing also. They've done it very well, the Suns. They've done it very well. And I don't want to say that I'd be happy with them winning the premiership because there's always that little feeling as a Freo fan. It's like, oh God, these other teams are now starting to get them before us. But I wouldn't hate seeing it because, they're going to be really exciting to watch this year. Hopefully it's good for the game up there as well. Because obviously with success comes fans. You know, people like to bandwagon. People like to get on board. People like to see, hey, look, what's going up over there in the Gold Coast and the Suns.
And Gold Coast as a sporting town has been a bit of a black hole for the entirety of the season. So I think if they do really show the ability to get up and going, the people will get behind them because the Titans have sucked forever.
Yep.
The basketball teams they've had there have been rubbish. The A-League team lasted about 5 minutes. Like it's been a bit of a sporting black hole. So if they can get up and going, I reckon the people will get behind them. Let's just see how some of these young kids go, because I reckon Leo Lombard's in line for a big season this year, who's become kind of the forgotten yesterday's news. Highly touted draft pick out of 2024. Had some game time last year, showed some promise, but I think all the excitement around Newland, Patterson has kind of taken away a little bit from Lombard, but he's looking very good. Let's see what happens with Patterson and Newland, because I think both these players have the potential to be very special.
Yep.
And, you know, if they can come in and strengthen this 22 straight away, which is always a big ask of a first season player, but if they can do it, they're going to be very good.
Yeah, doing very good. I always thought this was like Lombard. There was all the story was like how he was a Gold Coast kid all growing up. He was a big fan, and then he got a game. I know that, but then he got a game, and then it was just like, oh, good for him. And that's all I thought about him, like forever and ever. So you make a good point. Like under the radar, though, is not a bad place to be for a young player, because if no one's paying you attention, you can fire up.
They've obviously lost players too. I'll try and keep this relatively quick. We've lost some players. They've lost some players too. I'm not switching allegiance and stuff like this. They've lost some players as well, which does change things for them. But I don't think it's been big losses. They've lost a lot of depth players like Fiorini, Flanders. I mean, when you look at the quality of the midfield, to give up what they have to get what they've now got, you do that deal 100 times out of 100. You don't even think about it. You just press the button.
Yeah, 100%. Got a pretty good coach too. Story of the season, Jesse.
Suns rising as clear premiership contenders.
Ooh, can't wait to see them come September. Let's go, Jesse, to our very last team. For those of you playing at home, the smart ones, you'll know that it's the Hawthorn Hawks that Jesse has finishing as minor premiers in their ladder window 1st to 4th. Only Will Day on the injury list at the moment, which is fantastic.
And expected.
Yes. You reckon we're doing our little fun Hawthorn win dance quite a bit this year, Jesse?
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty easy one to do, because I generally think this side's going to win 20 games.
Wow.
Because what their brand allows them to do is beat anyone as long as they are on. So if Hawthorn are up and about, they can beat all of the 17 teams in this competition, sometimes quite easily. Now, teams will have bad nights.
Sure.
Right? Hawthorn will have bad nights too. There'll be a few games they lose and they'll be very disappointed by. But what we saw last season, despite the fact they didn't actually finish that high up the ladder, relatively speaking, was the ability to beat anybody. Like, they were 6th, and yet they were the most dangerous team in the final series, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Even more so than a team like Brisbane, who just grind out results. Geelong, grind out results. I think Hawthorn had that danger factor last year. What we're going to see this season is a young list with another preseason, so moving forward, trending upwards in that regard, and now the ability to capitalise on some of these intangibles. Your only holdback for Hawthorn is, can Jack Gunston keep his form? That for me is the only concern, because I don't know if their midfield was unbelievably strong last year. So if they can boost that a little bit more and keep Gunston's productivity to even say 40 goals as opposed to 60, but then you get Cal Shadir, maybe Chol can pick up some of the slack because he does some really weird things sometimes. Like I think he's really good.
Yeah.
But I don't think he knows he's really good.
Interesting.
Or maybe he does, and it's just like, not for me. It's weird. I love watching Murphy Chol, but gee, I would hate it if he was a Fremantle player.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, what's
he doing?
I want to shake you. I want to pick you up and go, stop it, Marbia. You're too casual. Like Brennan Cox, but half asleep. It makes no sense. But no, look, I
was going to say, the fun part of Hawthorn the last couple of seasons has been watching them play like with this level of attitude, right? That a lot of other teams didn't have. Like Sam Mitchell obviously said, when it kind of just went, go out and have fun. Like, here's a system, but just go out and have fun, enjoy yourself. As the team gets a little bit older and a bit more mature, Jesse, do you reckon that's going to still be be the mentality, or do you reckon Sam Mitchell was like, right, we've had our fun. let's next switch, next level until you get into a position like being minor premiers?
I think there'll be more elements of pragmatism. Like when games have gotten out of control for the Hawks, they've really struggled to arrest that. I think things like that, though, is what they'll be focusing on from that tactical and pragmatic point of view. But I think Hawthorn would be poorer for going up against a team like the Suns and saying, let's set up to suffocate stoppages.
Yep.
Like, that's not how the Hawthorn are going to beat the Suns. They're going to beat the Suns by out-muscling them and their sheer quality. Nick Watson, I think, could be in for a huge season. Sam Butler could be in for a huge season. These guys they're both under 22. That's a big promising sign for the future. If these young players can continue to trend up, this could be a very good few years for the Hawks.
If they can get it, it's a young team, very young team. If they can get going this year and get it done now, we're going to be saying the Hawks name a lot when it comes across the next couple of years. And only in good. And you're gone.
I know I've got them in first. I'd probably put the Suns ahead of them, and maybe the Crows.
Okay.
And the Lions ahead for the premiership. I think it may come. It might be like Adelaide last year. It may come a year too soon for them. But then again, they're so damaging in that final series that, like, almost finishing first would be the worst outcome for the Hawks. They're probably better off finishing in a place like fourth, so they have that lower expectation.
Okay.
And they go from being the hunted to the hunter. I think that's probably better for them. But I look at this list and I look at the fact of how quickly some of these guys are developing, and I don't know if the Hawks need anything. I don't look at this list and say they're short. Like, we might even see Schubert play this season, who they picked up in the draft as a key forward. I mean, if he is getting game time this season and having an impact, I mean, there's another Swiss Army knife blade component that they can just throw out there. So I think this is a really good time to be a Hawthorn fan. And I know they've had a lot of good times to be a Hawthorn fan in the last 20 or so years, but I think, in terms of sheer list power, I don't think this will be the same as 2013 to 2012 to 2015. I don't think it will be that.
Okay.
But I think the ability to just win anytime, anywhere will take them very far.
And the story of the season for them, Jesse?
Hollywood Hawks, superb form for finals.
Okay.
I think that was meant to be premiere.
Yeah, premiere.
You just chopped off an E, so I skipped it. You put premiere.
Well, still say the word, Jesse.
I was confused. That's why I just skipped the word. So I was like, that's not what I said. Hollywood Hawks premiere, superb form for finals. Maybe Liam could premiere some correct spelling in Just the Tips, which will be coming out to you at some point after this episode. But thank you, everyone, for joining us on the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. If you enjoyed, give us a like, give us a subscribe. If you're on YouTube, a review on one of the preferred podcasting platforms. And tell us in the comments what you think of both our thoughts on the teams as we get into 2026, and also what your thoughts on your team are. Are you pumped? Are you a little bit miserable? Let us know. If you're a Fremantle fan, you can come join me in the misery party, or you might be one of the 95% of the fan base is weirdly excited for this season. Let us know what you're thinking. But Liam, a pleasure as always. Just the tips also not just the tips anymore. No. It's tips and trades because we're doing fantasy this season. So our weekly preview show for the upcoming round will be coming out not long after this episode, so make sure you tune into that as well.
First one, Jesse, will come out the day after this comes out, my friend, because we are at that end of the year. The season is about to begin.
Hot on the heels. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you next time on the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast.
Bye, everybody.